Take a look at your study guide. There's actually a misprint up here. It is part 5, Unit 3, part 5 study guide for advanced math. Okay, number 1 says to evaluate, we have to write our answer in simplest form. Remember, whenever we're adding or subtracting fractions, the first thing we need to do is find common denominators. And we do that by finding their least common multiple. Well, 3 and 5, there's nothing that 3 and 5 are both divisible by, so we know we're just going to multiply 3 times 5, which gives me 15. So I have to find my new fractions, equivalent fractions with a denominator of 15. So I'm rewriting my original fractions, and I know 3 times 5 equals 15, so I'm going to do the same thing to my numerator, times 5, which gives me 10. And then 5 times 3 gives me 15 over here, so I'm going to do the same thing to my numerator, which is 3. So I bring it on down, we have 10/15, and again, that one was negative up there, plus 3/15. I know my rules for integers says that when I'm adding, if my signs are different, we're finding the difference. So I'm actually going to take 10 minus 3, which is 7. We keep the sign from the bigger number. 10 was bigger, so it's going to be a negative 7/15. Number 2, again, we're evaluating and writing our answer in simplest form. So I have to find common denominator between 16 and 24. So I'm going to do that by finding the least common multiple. So I know that they're both divisible by 2, and that gives me 8 and 12. 8 and 12 are both even numbers, and those are also divisible by 2, so that's going to give me 4 and 6. 4 and 6 are also even, so I can divide by 2. That's 2 and 3. And so now I know I'm multiplying 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay, so 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 2 is 4. And then we have times 3. 4 times 4 is 16 times 3, and that gives me 48. So 48 is my least common multiple, or my least common denominator for those two. So I'm going to rewrite 15/16. We want it to have a denominator of 48. And I'm going to do the same thing for 3/24. We want it to have a denominator of 48. So 16 times 3 is 48, so that means we're going to do 15 times 3, which is 45. 24 times 2 is 48, so we're going to do the same thing to the numerator. Times 2 is 6. So now I have 45 over 48 minus, it's a subtraction, 6 over 48. Which gives me 39/48. They're not both even, but I know that they're both divisible by 3 because the sum of the digits is divisible by 3. So I can simplify this by dividing both by 3, which gives me 13/16. Okay, number 3, we are multiplying the fractions. Again, writing our answer in simplest form. We have to turn that negative 8 into a fraction by putting 1 under it. Now I'm going to look at my diagonals and see if I can simplify before I multiply. 8 and 14 are both even, so that means I can divide by 2. 14 divided by 2 is 7. 8 divided by 2, negative 8 divided by 2 is negative, oh my gosh, negative 8 divided by 2 is a negative 4. Okay, so we have negative 4 over 1 times 6 over 7. Negative 4 times negative 6 gives me a negative 24. 1 times 7 is just 7. We can't leave it like that. It's an improper fraction. So we're going to see how many times does 7 go into 24. So I'm just going to come up to the side here and do 24 divided by 7. 24 goes into 7, or I'm sorry, 7 goes into 24 3 times, which is 21. We have 3 left over. So my answer is going to be negative 3 and 3 sevenths. Start at the top here. 3, we had 3 left over, and then sevenths. That negative, remember we can use the Dorito man. So we had a negative number and a positive number, so the negative was left over, so that's how we know our answer is going to be negative. Number 4 says multiply the fractions, write our answer in simplest form. So again, I'm going to check my diagonals and see if I can simplify before I multiply. 6 and 18 are both divisible by 6. That becomes a 3. That becomes a 1. 4 and 16 are both divisible by 4. That becomes a 1. That becomes a 4. We can just multiply straight across the top and then straight across the bottom. 4 times 3 is 12. That one is just 1/12. Okay, number 5, multiply the fractions, write our answer in simplest form. So we have mixed numbers that we have to turn into improper fractions first. So we're going to take our whole number times our denominator, add our numerator. So 1 times 2 is 2, plus 1 is 3. Keep our denominator the same, and that's a negative. Times, we're going to do the same thing here. So 9 times 3 is 27, plus 1 is 28, over 3. Keep our negative. Now we're going to see if we can simplify before we multiply. So we're going to look at our diagonals. 3 and 3 are both divisible by 3, so that becomes 1 and 1. 2 and 28 are both divisible by 2, so that becomes a 1, and that becomes 14. Multiply your numerators. Negative 1 times a negative 14 gives me positive 14. 1 times 1 is 1. We're going to see how many times 1 goes into 14, which we know that's just going to equal our whole number, 14. Again, you can use Dorito Man. We used a negative and a negative, so a positive is left over, so we know our answer is going to be positive 14. Number 6, we're finding the quotient. Whenever we're dividing, we always have to remember we're doing keep, change, reciprocal. So I'm going to keep 3/4. I'm going to change division to multiplication. The reciprocal of 1 over 8 is 8 over 1, and again, that's a negative there. I'm going to see if I can simplify before I multiply. 8 and 4 are both divisible by 4. So that's a negative 2, and that's just a 1. So now I have 3 over 1 times negative 2 over 1. 3 times 2 is 6, and that's a negative. And then 1 times 1 is 1. Negative 6 divided by 1 is just going to be a negative 6. Again, you can always use Dorito Man to double check. We had a positive and a negative that we used, so a negative was left over, so our answer is going to be negative. Go ahead and flip to the back. Number 7 says find the quotient, write your answer in simplest form. This one we have to stop before we do keep, change, reciprocal because we need to turn our mixed numbers into an improper fraction. We do that by multiplying our whole number times our denominator. So 2 times 10 is 20, plus 1 is 21. Denominator stays the same. And we have to make that whole number 3 a fraction by putting a 1 under it. Now I'm going to do keep, change, reciprocal. Negative 21 over 10, change division to multiplication. Negative 3 over 1 becomes negative 1 over 3. Look at my diagonals. I see 3 and 21 are both divisible by 3. That becomes a 1. This becomes a 7. Multiplying my numerators, 7 times 1 is 7. 10 times 1 is 10. We had both of my numbers were negative, so my answer is going to be positive. And we can again use Dorito Man. We used a negative and a negative, so positive is left for my answer. Number 8, again, we're dividing. It says find the quotient. I have 2 mixed numbers, so I need to turn them to improper fractions first. 10 times 2 is 20, plus 1 is 21, over 2, divided by, same thing here, 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9, over 4. Now I'm going to do keep, change, reciprocal. So we keep 21 over 2. Change division to multiplication. The reciprocal of 9/4 is 4/9. I'm going to check my diagonals first. 21 and 9 are both divisible by 3. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 21 divided by 3 is 7. 4 and 2 are both divisible by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So I'm going to rewrite my fractions here because we got a lot going on. So we have 7 over 1, and that was negative, times 2 over 3. Multiply my numerators, and then multiply my denominators. And we're looking to see how many times does 3 go into 14. So I'm going to take 14 divided by 3. Goes in there 4 times, which is 12. We have 2 left over. So 4 and 2/3. Let's use our Dorito Man here. We used a negative and a positive, so my answer is going to be negative. So negative 4 and 2/3. All right, 6th grade, if you have any questions, please let us know. And go ahead and submit this on Canvas.